And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Swami Brahmananda, who during his near-death-like experience went to an infinite ocean of light. Swami Ji, thank you for joining me and welcome.
Thank you for the invitation. Namaste.
Let's just start on the day that this experience happened to you and go from there.
So this was back in 1976. I had been living with my guru, Swami Brahmananda, for about a year or so, when one morning in meditation, spontaneously, I was sitting in the lotus position and fell forward, and my head rested on the ground. And I, for a moment, lost complete consciousness. I have no idea what happened. My body just collapsed. And as my body collapsed, my consciousness was catapulted out of the physical body, so that I could see, I was in the corner of the room, and I could see my body bent over, with my head resting on the ground, unconscious. And in that moment, I began to hear a loud sound, almost like I was passing through a wind tunnel. And I went to a space of complete darkness. And I felt as if my energy was just tumbling. I was rolling head over heel, really loud sounds whistling through my ears. And at the end of what seemed to be a tunnel, this dark space, there was a tiny blue light. And I kept moving forward. I don't know for how long. And it turned out that it was a tunnel of darkness. And I was suddenly the other side of the tunnel, and in an ocean of blue light, of conscious light, all above me, below me, around me, to all sides. There was nothing but a conscious, ecstatic blue light. I felt a kind of a peace, a love, an expansive awareness that I'd never felt before. I rested in this awareness for a while. And then in a thought-free state just came the awareness that I had a choice to either stay here permanently in this light of awareness or go back to the experience of being embodied. And into my memory crept the thought of my mother, who was still alive at the time, having to bury her son. And I made the choice to come back to live in embodied form. And in that conscious choice, and it wasn't mental, it was a sort of a supramental consciousness, as an awareness. It wasn't like linear thinking thoughts, I need to go back. It was just an awareness. And suddenly I was drawn back. It felt as if there was a rubber band attached to my physical body. I was suddenly drawn back into the physical body. And the body was cold. It was stiff. There was no life in it. And I rested in that as my own consciousness began to revitalize the physical body. I began to feel the heartbeat again. I began to feel the breath moving. I began to feel the blood pumping through my body, and it began to warm up. And gradually I was able to begin to move my fingers, begin to move my muscles, and I was back in my physical body. But I was never the same after that. It was an awareness that I wasn't a physical body, that I live and have a physical body, but that my essential awareness is awareness itself, is pure consciousness. So it's really a life-transforming experience.
When you were in the blue light, did you communicate with anybody or any being?
No, there was no being other than my own self. That everything was my own consciousness. So I didn't meet anyone. There wasn't any external manifestation of form. There was just infinite consciousness, and I was a still point in the center of an infinite ocean of consciousness.
Were you alone meditating in your house, or were you at an ashram or something?
I was staying at my father's apartment, and I was alone at the time, and I was meditating. I had a picture of my guru and a picture of his guru's guru there. I was burning a candle, burning light. It was part of my morning practice. And I do recall that Muktananda had once said that in the spiritual journey, anyone who's destined to become one with universal consciousness will have an experience of death as part of the path. So I had that experience fairly early on, after only a year of being with my guru.
Your experience basically sounds like an NDE. I know you don't articulate any type of trauma to your body, but the experience itself is very similar to many other types of NDEs.
I've read quite a bit around NDEs, and it does seem like a sort of a classical experience. My guru Muktananda had said that we could experience that without actually having to go through the experience of physical death. That's part of the meditation experience. It was very much like a physical experience. I mean, I really felt the heart stop, the breathing stop, the coldness, the stiffness in the body. And then when the spirit, when the Atman of the self re-entered the body, it was the life force that revitalized the physical body. And it took me a while to be able to physically move it again, to get it active.
What's very interesting is that you were either given a choice or a choice was presented in front of you, whether you can stay or come back.
And it was precognitive. It was not a thought. It was simply an awareness. And it's hard to describe that, but going beyond what we call vikalpas, going beyond mental concepts, going beyond words, going beyond physical thought, that there are higher dimensions of our being, even beyond the mind, where we have an awareness without words. So it wasn't the words, I have a choice, I can go back, I can see my mother. It arrived as a full-blown awareness. Kind of like, when I'm writing a talk, for example, and I'm laboriously writing out my talk, and I'm thinking about what I want to talk about. Sometimes when I'm out for a walk or in meditation, the talk will just sort of appear as a complete unit. It would be like a download. It's like one thought, and it contains the whole in that one thought. And then I very quickly write down whatever that is. I put it into a particular form. And artists know this experience. Scientists know this experience of whatever it is that they're querying about or whatever they're thinking about. It doesn't come in a linear form of A plus B equals C. It comes as a complete unit. The word in Sanskrit we often use is pratibha, which means from the highest level of consciousness, an inspiration comes. It just sort of downloads in one bite. As I was contemplating this pratibha, I remember hearing the song "The Rose" for the first time, the Bette Midler song, "The Rose."
Yeah, I remember
and
that
the first
one.
time I heard it, I was driving a car and on my way from Orange County down to San Diego on the I think it was the 405 or the 5 freeway, and I heard this extraordinary piece of music that just moved me. And in the middle of rush hour traffic, I was so touched by this that I pulled over to the side of the freeway and sat so I could listen to the beauty of the words itself. It touched me. It just really opened up my heart. And so I was so eager that I read up on it. And I read that the author had one of these experiences of this piece of music downloaded as a single piece of music. And then it was her job just to write it down. Shaivism, which is the philosophy I teach, talks a little bit about this. It talks about Chaitanya consciousness, that when an artist is in touch with their inner being, and this divine inspiration comes, it comes as a complete unit. And if the artist has truly touched their own inner consciousness, that inner consciousness is transmitted through the piece of art, whether it's a piece of music or a poem. I had an experience in Los Angeles of going to the Getty Museum with a friend of mine. And there was an exhibit of ancient Indian art there. They had paintings and they had statues and various things. And we were both simultaneously attracted to this one particular statue. It was of one of the goddesses of India. And it was a beautiful statue, but it wasn't anything more beautiful than any of the other statues. But we were both simultaneously drawn to pranam, to put our head on the feet of this goddess. It's thought that the feet are sacred in this tradition. So we put our feet on the head of a guru or a great saint. And as we went down to put our head on her feet, we noticed that the feet were completely worn away from centuries and centuries of people placing their head on this feet. So my experience was that in ancient times, there was an artist who had this experience of supreme consciousness and created a form, this form of a sculpture. And the piece of art carried with it the rasa, the delight of the experience of the creator. Abhinavagupta, the great sage, the aesthetician, of India, wrote theories about it. It's called the theory of rasa, rasavada. And true art is when the artist has the capacity, first of all, has trained skill, has the craftsmanship to really bring an artistic vision into reality. And one who is deeply in touch with their own consciousness receives a pratibha, receives an inspiration, and then creates the form. And the form then carries the vibration, the shakti, the energy of that experience, the rasa, the juice. And this is true art, when an artist has that capacity.
Do you think that's only with art, or do you think all imagination comes from some conscious field like that?
Absolutely, it's universal. It's not limited to just art. When we think about the great scientists of the world and their breakthrough discoveries, most of them describe it as a revelation that took place in a moment. They might have had an image of a serpent eating its tail, or Einstein used to do these thought experiments, imagining what it would be like to travel at the speed of light. What would the experience be like? So it's part of the human condition. So whatever part of our human capacity to tap into that. So it can be in the form of art or science or creating a business or creating a relationship. This ability is innate within us. It's part of our consciousness. Part of our consciousness itself has this ability to manifest whatever it is where we focus our mind. So an artist is going to receive inspiration in the form of artistic expression and inspiration. He's not going to receive something from science. A scientist who's working on physics or biology will see their inspiration in that particular form. So the point that I'm making is that whatever our passion is, whatever is our dharma, whatever is our work, we can tap into that source of inspiration as a school teacher, as an artist, as a scientist, as a businessman. We're all entitled to that. It's part of our birthright. Within all of us is the capacity to create, to express. In Shaivism, which is the tradition I teach from, we say that we all perform what are called the five-fold cosmic functions, the same as the supreme consciousness which created the universe. We all create. Supreme consciousness created a universe. We create every moment with our thoughts. We maintain our thoughts. We dissolve one thought before the next thought emerges. And we create our own life from our thinking. So we all have this ability within us to create according to our thinking, according to our thoughts. This is why we think meditation is so important. It helps us to focus the mind in whatever area we want to, in spirituality, in business, in our art, whatever the form is, wherever we focus the mind, that's the form. That's where the self will express itself through that particular work.
What spiritual teachings would you say that you are a disciple of?
I'm part of a tradition called Siddha Yoga. This is a particular form of meditation and spiritual practice that was introduced in the West by Swami Muktananda. He came to the West in 1970 and in 1974, again in 1978. He made 3 visits to the West. where he brought the teachings of meditation. And his specialty was something called Shaktipat, which is the direct transmission from a fully enlightened being to a seeker that awakens their true potential on the spiritual path, awakens the Kundalini. And he showed us the path to meditation and spiritual practice, where we can come in to recognize the fullness of our own being, to come to realize our own inner divinity. His basic teachings were meditate on your own self, honor yourself, love your own being. God dwells within you as you. And he didn't preach any particular form of God. He said, if you're Catholic, if you're Christian, if you're Jewish, if you're Hindu, if you're Muslim, whatever tradition you've been raised in, continue your religion. Simply add meditation, and you'll realize God, the self, the inner self, in whatever form it is that your chosen deity. So he always encourages, continue your own religion, but just simply add meditation to it, and it will deepen your experience. And that was certainly true for me. When I first met Muktananda, I had been raised as a Catholic, very Catholic, 12 years, Catholic school, 8 years with nuns and 4 years with Franciscan priests. So when I first met Muktananda and I saw that people around me were worshiping as if he were a deity, I was a little puzzled by that, because as being raised Christian, Jesus is the savior and the one, and to worship another being was idolatrous. So even though I was having amazing spiritual experiences, still there was this inner doubt inside me. Was I really doing the right thing? Was this heresy? Was this witchcraft? What I had doubts about this. So one day we were chanting the mantra, did a lot of chanting in the ashram, hours and hours a day of chanting various mantras. And we were chanting Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. And I should mention that as a kid growing up, I didn't have a good voice. I was the kid in the school choir, in our room, that the teacher would say, just mouth the words. You don't have a good ear for music. You don't, So I was very dramatic. I would sing, act like this, but I wouldn't make any noise because I was tone deaf. I couldn't hit the right notes in the right keys. So we're chanting Om Namah Shivaya, and my Baba had said, chant loud, chant with great passion, chant with love. And I was chanting that way, and people around me are looking at me kind of funny. I'm not singing in the right key and off tune and all that. But anyway, suddenly during this chant, and this is difficult to describe, my consciousness shifted from being in my head. Like right now, I sort of feel, I often do, like I'm here, I'm seeing the world through my eyes and my ears. My consciousness descended to my heart, the very center of my being, and I was looking out. It was almost as if I was in a cave and I could hear my body chanting, but I wasn't seeing it like through my eyes or hearing it through my ears. And in this dark cave, I saw a light was coming towards me. It began as just a little dot, and it came closer and closer and closer. And as it came closer and closer, I saw that the light was coming out of the heart of Jesus. Now, as a Catholic, my chosen deity, what I really worshiped, was the Sacred Heart of Jesus. You may have seen the pictures of Jesus with the heart open, the heart exposed. And this light was pouring out of the heart and entering into me, and it was truly ecstatic. The light, I was being bathed in this extraordinarily beautiful, loving light. And my consciousness continued inside of the heart of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And inside the heart, I could see Muktananda sitting in the lotus, meditating, and his heart was exposed in the same way that Jesus's heart was exposed. And the light was coming out of his heart and filling me. And so I continued in this process of coming closer and closer to the light. And when I got inside the heart of Muktananda, I could see myself sitting in meditation. And the light was coming from my own heart. And I was amazed. And then I heard Muktananda's voice saying, "You're surprised. What did you think you'd find inside of your own heart?" Where do you think the love is coming from, but from your own being? And I was in awe that this was coming from my own heart. And I don't mean physical heart, I mean the center of my being. Having heard those words, I was suddenly pushed back into the cave of the heart. And interestingly enough, I could hear my body chanting Om Namah Shivaya, and I could hear that I was singing in tune in the right key. And I've been a singer ever since that. I lead kirtan. Something opened up inside where I could actually hear music and sound. And I came back from this experience totally enamored, totally comfortable, seeing the unity of all the spiritual traditions. I wasn't a Hindu, I wasn't a Catholic, I wasn't a Christian, I wasn't a Jew, I wasn't any of that. The commonality of all those traditions is the heart, is love, is the light of consciousness, is the very being itself, is the center of all religions. And all religions have a part of it. They have different ways of describing God or consciousness or the self, and they all have part of the picture. They're all pointing in the same direction. Once one has had a direct experience of our own inner consciousness, then we can see the truth in all the different religions. We can see the truth in Islam. You can read the Quran. You can read the Old Testament or the New Testament or the Agamas or the Vedas, and you see the essential truth described in different words. In India, they have this analogy of the 6 blind men are asked to describe an elephant, and each of them, they're blind, each of them touching a different part of the elephant. They're all touching the elephant, but they describe it in a different way. One is touching the trunk, and he says, "Oh, it's like a big giant hose." Someone else is touching the leg and says, "Oh, it's like a big giant tree trunk." Someone's holding the tail and says, "Oh, it's like a whisk broom. It's like a broom." They all had part of the truth, but not the whole thing. So the mystics of all traditions agree. They all say the same thing. The nature of the universe is consciousness. That consciousness dwells within each of us as our own being. And that's the purpose. That's the true God. The true God isn't in a temple or in a mosque. It's in the human heart.
How did you wind up in India?
It was through meeting Muktananda. I traveled in my late teens and early 20s seeking. I went to over 75 countries, studied in different traditions. I lived in the Middle East and Lebanon back in 1970, studied with a Sufi master, went to Japan and lived with a Zen master in the dojo, tried transcendental meditation and did hatha yoga with Swami Satchidananda, the Swami that opened up the festivities at Woodstock. And I was really a seeker for about 7 years when my yoga teacher in New York City told me that Muktananda was going to be coming to the United States and I would have an opportunity to meet him. And I was living in New York. He was going to be in Oakland, California. So my yoga teacher and 9 carloads of people made a journey, a week-long journey by car to meet Muktananda in Oakland, California. The night before he arrived, my Baba was hospitalized. He was having some sort of seizures, and he was hospitalized. I was really disappointed we'd come all this way, and I wasn't going to have a chance to meet this great being. He was said to have the capacity to awaken Kundalini to give Shaktipat, and something that I was really eager for. But the next morning, he sent word that he was well enough to see people. He was in the San Francisco hospital at the time, and they set up a waiting room where he would give darshan. That means the time when you can meet him and greet him. So there was a long line of people to greet him. And I'd really prepared for this meeting. That morning, I was already meditating, not deeply, but meditating. And I heard he could read people's minds. So I wanted to meditate deeply that morning to clear my mind so I wouldn't have any impure thoughts in his presence. Also, having lived in Japan, studied a little bit of Zen I knew that sometimes gurus would ask test questions, before they would accept a disciple. Like, what's the sound of one hand clapping? What did your face look like before your mother was born? I'd read all these various things. So I had 2 cups of coffee to make my mind really alert in case he asked me a test question. Then I put on my spiritual clothes, wanted to make a good impression. I had long hair, hippie beard, Jesus beard. And I put on my denim jacket with all the signs of the zodiac and my jeans with an Om patch on the rear end. So I was really eager to make a good impression so that this great guru would accept me as his disciple. He said there was a line of people waiting to meet him, and I was brought before him and pranamed, and I was ready for that test question. My mind was really alert. And he looked at me and he said, "What's your name?" And my mind went completely blank. I couldn't remember my own name. I was mortified. He swatted me with this peacock feathers. He said, "Well, where are you from?" And again, my mind was blank, but I remembered my name. I said, "Oh, my name is David now." He's very good. He swatted me with these peacock feathers, and they were intoxicating. As the feathers were brushing me, I could feel this energy rushing in, which made my mind even more quiet. And he said, "What kind of work do you do?" In his presence, my mind wouldn't function. It wouldn't think. I couldn't remember what I did for a living, but I remembered where I was from. I was like 2 beats behind. He would ask the question. And I said, "Baba, I'm from New York." And then I was mortified. I realized I'm not really from New York. I was just living in New York. I'd come from New York, but I'm from Pittsburgh. So he had this kind of effect of like, where are you from? From New York, from Pittsburgh, from nothing. He chuckled. He just laughed. He swatted me with his peacock feathers again. He said, "Go sit over in the corner over there. Just sit over there quietly." And I did. So they helped me over. I was a little woozy at the time. I leaned up against the wall, closed my eyes, and I went into the deepest meditation I'd ever had. My mind was completely still. My heart was completely still. It was wide open. And I just looked up for a moment. He was greeting other people. And as I looked at him, he turned his head and he looked directly at me. And there was a bolt of light that came out of his eye and entered my heart. And this bolt of light was like lightning. It opened my heart in a way I'd never experienced. It's like an explosion took place in the heart. My heart just opened. And I have to tell you, I was so in love. I was in love. It was a love that I'd never even imagined before. It was so overwhelming. It was so beautiful. I was in love with everyone and everything. I was surrounded in a field of light. And inside there was an awareness that at last I'd found what I was looking for. I'd come home. This was my home. And I decided to live with Muktananda. I didn't even go back to New York to clean out my apartment or get rid of my possessions. I just lived with him from that day forward. I moved into the ashram and stayed with him for about 8 years. And that began my sadhana.
Now, that was an ashram in California, or you moved to India?
That was an ashram in Oakland, California. It's called the Siddha Foundation. It was at the corner of Stanford and San Pablo, one of the roughest parts at the time of Oakland. I lived with him there. He was just preparing to give a retreat in Arcata, California. So I began to travel with him. Muktananda traveled quite a bit. We went from Oakland, California to Arcata for the retreat and on to upstate New York and the Catskill Mountains, then on to India. Stayed in India for a couple years, 3 years, 2.5 years. Then we continued the third world tour again. We traveled all over India, went to Delhi and did various yatras. Then in late 1978, we went to Australia and began the third world tour, Australia, Hawaii, California, New York, Florida, Massachusetts, Boston. Then Baba went back to India again in 1981, I think it was. Yeah.
What do you think are some of the greatest lessons that he ever taught you?
Well, there were 2 fundamental ones that were a core of his teachings. And the first of them was meditate on your own self, honor yourself, love your own being, that God dwells within you as you, as your very own consciousness, as your very own being. This was a new idea for me. I'd read about the indwelling, the Atman, but it was just a concept. He was able to transmit the direct experience of my own divinity. And it's not just my own divinity, it's the divinity of all creatures. His second major teaching was see God in other people, see God in everyone, not just human beings, see God in everything. You know, the Shiva Sutras say Chaitanyam Atma, that the nature of reality is consciousness itself, to see God in everyone and in everything without exception. One of my limitations, one of my old samskaras was I had this great ability to find fault. You know, I sort of prided myself in that. I went to film school and I could look at the films of the great masters like Hitchcock and Godot and Bertolucci, and I could find a jump cut or I could find some fault in it. And I prided myself in being a detective. And I could do that with people. I could look in and find out what their shortcomings were. One day in his satsang, he was talking about seeing everyone as consciousness and not even seeing fault. Don't look for it. Give up that habit of looking for that which is not the best. And it really struck me that I'd spent so much of my time being critical of things that this was acting as a block towards realizing the self. Now, for a period of time, I lived in the ashram, but I needed to make a living. I needed to earn money. It wasn't just like you could come and live in the ashram for free. And I was living at Baba's ashram in New York City. And I was working on Wall Street. I was raising money to drill oil wells back in the go-go 70s. And I would stay with Baba on the weekends and hear his talks. And he had given this talk about not seeing fault. And by the way, he looked right at me when he said, don't even see faults. And so this particular morning, I was preparing for work, put on my nice three-piece suit. I had a Brooks Brothers suit, Florsheim shoes, Crouch and Fitzgerald bag. It was really a fancy Wall Street executive, you know. And was on my way to work. I was on my way to the subway, catch the work down to Wall Street. And I saw this man standing on a soapbox. I don't know if you've ever seen these kind of crazy people in New York that stand on soapboxes and preach. Well, this guy was there. The end of the world is coming. The end is nigh. Repeat, repeat, repent, repent, and going on and on. There was a big crowd watching him. Had stickers in his hair and placards and all this. And I thought, what a fool, what a jerk this guy is. But I got myself. Baba said, don't see faults. Don't see faults. So I said, all of this is consciousness. God dwells within this person as consciousness. But then the thought, but he really is a fool. He's making a jack out of him. So I'm going to stay and I'm going to enjoy this. So I was having this wrestling match, you know, going on between my don't see faults, but then seeing faults in reality. So just as I decided to stop and enjoy myself and watch this guy make a fool of himself, at that very moment, I stepped in a big pile of dog. Boom, split. The dog it was a big pile. It was all over my shoes. It was on my briefcase. It was all over. And I was thoroughly disgusted. I was jumping up and down. Oh my God, what happened? What happened? What? You know, and what all those people that were watching the speaker make a fool of himself all came over and watched and start laughing at me, making a fool of myself, jumping up and down with the dog shit on my shoes. I had to go back and change clothes and all of that, but I learned a really valuable lesson, you know, that when I was seeing the man as consciousness, seeing everything as consciousness, I was enjoying. I was in ecstasy. I was happy. I was in love. But as soon as I began to see fault, look for fault, I found fault, and I became the loser. I became the foolish man. So one of the great lessons I learned from my Baba was to practice, not just to think, to have the thought, but to really practice and make an effort to see the best in everyone, to see everyone as consciousness, to see everyone as an expression of the divine in different forms. And when my old habit of finding fault and thinking less of others would creep into, to not engage in that thought. It gave me the freedom to choose which thoughts I would hold on to and which thoughts I could just let pass through. Just because I have a thought doesn't mean it's true, doesn't mean I have to engage in it. So at that point, I gained the ability to watch as thoughts would creep into my mind, and I could hold on to this one and engage it because it was uplifting. And any caring thoughts or any thoughts that would drag me down or see faults in others, I didn't have to listen to it. That the mind can be our best friend. It can also be our worst enemy. It's our mind that creates this universe as a paradise, as heaven, but it's also the mind that creates hell, that creates suffering. So one of the key benefits of living with Muktananda was developing this ability to deal with the mind, to hold on to thoughts that were constructive and uplifting, and that would help me build the life of my dreams, and to not listen to the thoughts that would drag me down.
At some point, you left, I guess, when he died, and you went back to what people would call a regular life here in the U.S.?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So after he died in 1982, he left two successors who are still alive, by the way, if anyone's interested in pursuing that tradition. Swami Mahamandaleshwar Nityananda has an ashram in Magod, Gujarat, one in Ganeshpuri, India, one in Kankal, India, one in Walden, upstate New York. Guru Mai, Baba's other successor, has an ashram in upstate New York in South Fallsburg. And Muktananda, before he passed, left two successors. So these are my successors. So if you want to continue in the lineage, you can study with them. So I'm still very close with Swami Nityananda. I visit him a couple of times a year whenever he's in India. He spends most of his time now in the upstate New York, but he spends time in India as well. He'll be coming here to Dehradun this month. I plan on spending some time with him in a little town called Kankal. So the lineage continues. In 1981, Baba had given me sannyas. He made me a Swami. Arranged the whole ritual where I took sannyas, along with Swami Nityananda. We took sannyas at the same time. And Muktananda left me in Los Angeles. He said, I want you to start an ashram here. So I did. I started an ashram. That ashram functioned. We had leased on a property in Santa Monica. We kept it for about 5 years. And then around that time, I decided to leave, to go back into the world. I established the ashram. And the ashram continues today as the Siddha Muktananda Meditation Center in Santa Monica. It continues today.
If you become a disciple, do you have to become a vegetarian?
No, nothing. There's nothing required. What you do find, however, is that often people who receive Shaktipat, receive the direct transmission, find that their life becomes about realizing the self and meditation. And so you spontaneously and naturally begin to eat the kind of food that's more conducive to meditation. So, for example, meat is a little more difficult to digest. So you will find yourself naturally, not everyone, but most people, certainly I did. I was not a complete vegetarian before I met Muktananda. But once I received Shaktipat and began meditating, I just found the idea of eating meat and non-veg food not helpful for meditation. So it's not a moralistic position. It's really a very practical one, eating what we call sattvic foods. Sattvic foods have more prana, have more life force in them. So there's more life force in plant food than there is in animals that have died. So not required, but it does happen to many people spontaneously and naturally as their inner energy unfolds.
How long do you think you're going to be staying in India at this point?
At this point, it may be my permanent home. I've been here. I've been coming since 1975, but this particular stay, I've been here 5 years now, and I'm involved in a project. I've been asked to initiate a project called Second Education. First education is what we get in school. We go to school, we learn reading, writing, arithmetic. First education is about the outer world. And our education systems are very, very good at doing that. I'm in the process of bringing something called second education into the school systems in India. Second education is the education of the inner person. It involves meditation, learning emotional intelligence, learning what has traditionally been taught in the ashrams with gurus. Now, and that information largely had been kept secret for thousands of years. Now, with the internet and everything, much of that information is available. Much of the written information, the scriptures are available, but the direct experience needs to have a teacher to really make sure you understand the process of meditation and to guide. So we're bringing this into the universities. I'm here. The reason I moved to Dehradun this week is that our pilot project is here at Doon University in Dehradun, where I'll begin teaching this month in the universities, teaching meditation and really the science of the self. This is part of the Indian knowledge systems, the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Tantras, the various Indian scriptures have taught this for thousands of years, but somehow it's been largely kept in the realm of the ashrams and gurus. Now we're making this information public. We're hoping to bring it into the school systems all over India. We have this class at Doon University starting this month. We have a conference September, October, where we'll be bringing in the top teachers of meditation and Eastern spirituality into a conference. It'll be available online, so I can post that and give people information if they're interested in that. And the idea is that after these pilot projects, we are hoping that this curriculum called Second Education will be available to all of the universities in India, and then train teachers to bring it into the school systems from K through 12. So it's really a revolutionary program. And it's part of, in my experience, Muktananda's mission was to bring meditation to the world. He called it the meditation revolution. And I feel myself that that's my work, is to continue his work of spreading meditation to all who are open to receive it. So if this project goes well, I would imagine, living here the remainder of my years.
After watching this podcast, people may want to reach out to you and ask you questions. Are you open to that?
I am.
What's the best way to reach you?
I have a WhatsApp group called Brahmananda Sangha, BRAHMANANDA Sangha, SANGHA, Brahmananda Sangha. And if anybody looks that up, they can join the group. That's an open forum where I teach and announce my teachings. They could send me WhatsApp messages. My personal number is +1 714 925 6646. I am on Facebook. And I'm at Brahmananda David Now, NOWE, so they could become friends and send messages. So I'm open to receive messages, and if anybody wants, I could put them in the WhatsApp group, and then they can be apprised of the teachings, the conference. We are in the process of developing a website for Second Education, which would be a really important resource for people who want to learn more about the project and want to receive the teachings. Just recently completed 21 hours in a studio here in Dehradun. I was at Doon University. They offered us their studio, and I recorded a first semester course, and that will eventually be available on our website. The website's still in development, so I can't give you the web address yet, but I will post it in Brahmananda Sangha.
Swamiji, before we finish up, can you leave us with one last positive message?
The most important message that I can have is the words of my own guru, which is meditate on yourself, honor yourself, love and worship your own being, because God dwells within you as you. Once we recognize the divinity within our own being, then the practice is to see that same divinity in other people, to see God in other people. So the message is twofold. Know the divinity within your own being and see that same consciousness in everyone and in everything without exception. And that's the big kicker right there. The difficulty is without exception. We all have grievances and relationships that have been upsetting to us. We need to learn to forgive, because by holding on to old grievances, old upsets, they're just mental concepts. If we hold on to that, we continue to punish ourselves for something someone else did. So it's important to learn how to forgive, to go beyond the limitations of the mind, and to see divinity in everyone and in everything.
Swami Ji, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very honored. May everyone be blessed.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.